Yeah, we're going live. We are live, believe it or not. Waiting for everyone to dial in for our general session on the John Lavenia Success Mastermind today, 20th of April, I think. No, it's not the 20th of April. It's my notes that are out of date. Wow.
4th of July.
Gosh, 4th of July. It's, yeah, I don't know which day it is. Just, I recorded this one earlier, by the way. I recorded this one earlier. Anyway, it really is, depending on which way you look at your dates, the 4th of May. So 4th of May session, not the 20th of April. Welcome everyone that's here. We're seeing a lot of familiar faces dialing in, which was lovely. I can see Nicola. I've been talking to Adrian at length. He's found a brilliant new tool for unblocking suspended accounts, which is in the chat. He's going to post that elsewhere. So thanks for that, Adrian. Mark's here. Daisy, I think it might be your birthday, Daisy. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday from us all. Sandy, I spoke to. Carl, I see. Javier or Evelyn, I'm not sure if they're both on. Edward, so Virginia, Ivier, yeah, I can't mention you all. There's Sandra, yeah, people are piling in as we speak. Julia, I just can't keep up with you all. So, bit of housekeeping as usual. Ivier's on later, 5 p.m. Eastern Time US, 10 p.m. in the UK. Corporate Curios, brilliant session. If you can join it, have a dip into that and have a good chat and a listen with Ivier. Wayne tonight, Metaphors for Success on the calendar, 9 p.m. Eastern Time US, which unfortunately is 2 a.m. in the UK for the Hardy. So there you go. Today, what am I going to talk about today? Well, I wanted to talk about Adapt or Die, which is a dramatic title for a dramatic issue. And you might think I'm being dramatic, but here are the words I'd like to share with you from a former British Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, very well known on our side of the pond. He said, "He who rejects change is the architect of decay. The only human institution which rejects progress is the cemetery." That's what Harold Wilson said. So dramatic way to start off. And I love that quote. It's pretty radical. Anyway, today's session is really heartfelt, and it's born of me witnessing the mixed fortunes of people and businesses that I'm involved with or that I'm aware of. And this has been highlighted in particular by the impact of the pandemic at the moment, and who amongst us and amongst other people I've come across was able to adapt and to change, and who basically wasn't. And whether that was because of short-term or longer-term approaches and attitudes or decisions doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What is happening is real. It's really happening right now. And this could happen again, or something similar could happen again, or something completely different, but just as dramatic. I mean, how many of us, for example, are ready now and thinking about the impact of climate change on what we're doing and the way we're living, on our whole location, our industry, our business, our sector? How many of us spare a thought for that every day? We wouldn't have been sparing a thought for a pandemic 2 years ago. So we've got to keep thinking. It's time, I think, to speak about change and adaptability in our mindset. And it's worth noting also that there are factors which are thrust upon us externally, like the pandemic and other things, natural disasters, but there are self-made factors as well, which are internal, and those can leave us quite vulnerable. Success today, as an example, can breed complacency, overconfidence in tomorrow. In the face of what's changing around us, we can just keep going because we've had success and we stick to it without thinking. So we're going to try and look today at issues around change and adaptability and the mindset we need to deal with it. There are lots of recordings, by the way, in the Life and Business Tools library covering the acceleration, the pace of change, some of the things that are happening in e-commerce and the internet. So they're worth looking at if you can. We did have long discussions with the group. Julia was questioning particularly certain things and raising lots of interesting issues. So that's a good set of recordings to watch about disrupting of the old orders. If you're a JLSM member, you can see those recordings. So the topics covered are all part of this theme of change. And it's now very clear that change really is upon us like it never has been before, and at such a pace and from so many directions at once. There's just no longer such a thing as preserving the status quo, that wonderful old phrase, let's preserve the status quo. The status quo is the present situational condition. And believing in the status quo today is like trying to hold back the rising tide, I'm afraid. Not much is durable anymore, and the status quo just isn't there. Things are being disrupted every single day, and the momentum of this change and this pace of change are accelerating. Look at taxi drivers as an example. They believed there was an order of things, a status quo that would potentially last forever. They paid vast, vast sums, I mean, really huge sums in major cities, hundreds of thousands of dollars for taxi licenses. And then they paid even more for special cars. Then they woke up with Uber breathing down their necks, and then Uber consuming them. China is one of the most major examples of this. They just did not participate in the Industrial Revolution as we know it from the 1850s onwards. They didn't take part, and they turned 800 years of economic supremacy, 800 years supremacy and power, into nearly 250 years of stagnation. It's taken them all this time to get back on track from a major blip in their history. They just didn't adapt and participate. They closed off for various reasons from development. Shipyards, they were all building wooden ships, particularly where I come from, in large quantities. There was a whole thriving industry surrounding that and suppliers surrounding them. But this all disappeared with the advent of the iron hull and steam. They just went in less than 20 years. They were gone. Video rental shops, remember them, anybody? They just fizzled out after a slow and agonizing but certain death. And matters are now accelerating. Previously, we might have been able, if we were adaptable, to have 10 or 20 years to fix things. A long warning, you could see things coming, like a telegraph punch from a box. You could see it coming and duck. We can't do that anymore. The disruptors now, the disruptive technologies, they're hitting us like unseen torpedoes. And it all sounds unreal. It all sounds quite detached, maybe not relevant to us, but it really, really is, because we could just wake up to find that our admin role has been automated. Our traditional client base has migrated to a new app. Our whole sales channel or platform is suddenly obsolete. This could really, really happen. And if we don't maintain this adaptive mindset and outlook on life, we could get taken out with no warning. And then on top of all of that, we're being told that the knowledge and practices that people are taking on now are evolving so fast that younger generations might have to expect 17 jobs and 5 different careers. Some people I've read are saying 15 career changes are possible now. And that's what we should expect to confront. Even older generations are being told they could have several jobs and careers in their shorter remaining lifespan. Whole courses of study, we're being told, will be obsolete before we even complete them. So the first 2 years of a degree someone has written are now in danger of being obsolete by the time you reach the 3rd year. And in order to gauge all of this and just how different our situation is to previous centuries, let's look at the example of the career expectancy of a telegrapher. Those wonderful telegraphers that sent the telegrams. Tremendous growth and explosion in telegraphy, which was a brand new form of communication, occurred in the USA from the 1830s onwards. And that industry was still going strong 100 years later after the Second World War. That was a really good run. But now we've all seen radical change in just a very, very, very few short years. Look at the Xerox machine, the copier. It was probably invented, it was developed in 59, but by the 1970s, widely used. We all saw them, and later even more widely used. But it's now been largely overtaken by scanning and digital processes, and it's declining after 50 years of major use. Commercial fax machines, again, same problem, declining after almost 40 years of major use. Took off maybe in the 70s, widely used, I remember, in offices in the 80s. We hardly use it now. I don't even put the fax number on my communications details. I don't want faxes now. Internet email over the internet. When I was doing business at that point, even in early 1994, we weren't really sending many because nobody had an address. Hardly anyone actually had an email address we could use. And that technology was transformational in less than 5 years. The whole of the World Wide Web, based on the original internet, took off really big time in the 1990s. And you couldn't really visit many sites or do many transactions at that point. But look what's happened. Transformational in less than 5 years. Amazon itself, that we all know and love, no doubt, launched from a garage on the 5th of July, 1994, that recently. And in 1995, it had a turnover of $511,000. Look how giant it is now and how prevalent it is now. Wi-Fi, the same thing. I used to have to travel with a telephone socket kit so I could plug my modem into the phone socket wherever I was in the world. I even had a bush kit where you had 2 crocodile clips you could clip onto the wires. That came as part of it. Now, suddenly we pitched up at a hotel, Wi-Fi was everywhere. We could communicate in a cafe, we could plug into a railway station. This took time to spread, but once it did, it was transformational. We wouldn't have even guessed this was going to happen. The whole era of the Apple smartphone and then the other smartphones, that phone, the first iPhone, unveiled to the public on the 9th of January 2007. Can you imagine? BlackBerry got wiped out, so did everybody else, and the rest is history. So this is where we are. And later on, when I open up the floor, I'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions to the situation we find ourselves in, but it really is there. This is so real and so important to us that we just can't not take it seriously. But we can, on the contrary, galvanize ourselves if we remain aware and train ourselves to be aware. And we can also act if we're willing to act. And we'll come back to this. Change can bring a lot of profits for some people with the right mindset. And with dramatic change comes huge opportunity. But there's also a great danger in all of this for the unprepared, the unwary, the timid perhaps, the inflexible. Those are the people that are going to suffer. And what about, worth thinking, of course, that if nothing changed, the world would be a dull place. So it makes things exciting, but sometimes too exciting if we're not ready for it. So let's stop for a minute and say, well, how many of us thought we'd be retailers this year? Even as recently as January last year, did you think you'd be a retailer? Because you are now, or some of you are now. What went through your mind when you took that decision, saw the YouTube adverts for e-commerce training and decided to take the plunge? What went through your mind then? That was a key example of change confronting you and you diving in and doing something about it. So you've done it once. Whatever your thoughts were, you did it. Some of you are e-commerce retailers right now already. And that opportunity came about because of this huge change and scale potential of the internet and what we can now do with it. And if you hadn't had the right mindset then to take that leap into the dark, you'd never have seized that opportunity that was thrown up by that great change. And maybe some of us that are watching right now didn't seize the change, didn't seize the opportunity. So what can we do about that? What can we learn from that? And you're all welcome to comment in a minute, of course, on that when we throw open the floor. But let's look at mindset, because really, again, this comes down to an attitude and a mindset. We can decide how we see change. We don't need to fear it. We can decide how we look at it. For one thing, we can certainly always be forward-looking and rise to challenges and embrace change. We can do that if we choose to. Can we perhaps just allow ourselves 15 minutes a day to think forward, to look around us, to read, to examine, to look at what's happening in our business, our sector, or our industry? I think we can do that. It doesn't take much time to keep reading, searching on the net, and keep up to date. I do try and do that in the sectors I'm involved in, which have been buffeted by major tax changes, major upheavals in tech and other factors. Also, look at what other people are doing. Read up on that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel to embrace change. You don't have to be the first mover with all the risk. Copy what others are doing and improve it. That's often the best formula. I think somebody said the Apple was the 20th iPad. It wasn't the first tablet. The 20th tablet, rather. It wasn't the first tablet, but they dominated the market. They just did it better. Here's a quote for you. Time to throw in a quote, definitely. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. And that was said by Elon Musk. And if there's someone who is the essence of change and innovation, it's certainly Elon Musk. I think you'd all agree with that. So we need to be thinking fast and forward. And we need to look out for signs of change every day, reading, keeping our ears open, listening, thinking. And we've got to look out for those signs of change. Are things changing in our product pricing? Are there customer attitude and taste changes going on? Is the environment around us changing? What about new technology and innovation? Is that coming in? Can we see that creeping in around the edges? Because maybe that's going to become the next big thing. You know, I've seen recently so many people sink or swim in the last year. I've seen people swim and celebrate and embrace the changes and really try new things they've always wanted to do. And I've also seen people completely sink because they've stuck to those old paradigms, like stick to your knitting, stick to your expertise, do more of the same, just concentrate on doing it well, you'll be okay. Well, that actually nowadays just might sink you. It really might sink you. We can't do that anymore. A second thing that occurred to me is, you know, let's look at focus. You know, we often discuss focus, habit, and consistency in these sessions. That's what they're all about. But blindly focusing, having blind habits and blind consistency is, again, a killer. How many people focused on, as I said, building those beautiful wooden ships I mentioned? They did it consistently. They did it beautifully until there were no more customers. There's nobody buying them anymore. You know, we need to be prepared to reassess what's going on and to readapt to it, to change our focus and our efforts constantly, and to alter those habits as well, according to the change we've made in our focus. And then, yes, we've got to be consistent and perform our new routine, but it's a new one. And it's been designed by us to adapt to what's just happened. And remember that this year, the changes we've already wrought are just the start of our journey. This is about carrying on being about smart focus. It's smart focus, not blind focus we need. And another favorite topic, a third thing I wanted to mention, lifelong learning, which we talk about all the time. We can learn and develop constantly. And I certainly believe we should grab all the learning opportunities that are presented to us. We can't sleep on the mattress of our present knowledge, as I like to put it. Learning is potential power, but we've got to act on it. We have to act on it. We have to take it in, assess it, and act on it. You know, are we questioning ourselves? Are we truly committed to learning new skills? Are we actually acting on this? We've got to keep kicking ourselves for that. We need to practice those soft skills as part of the learning process. We've talked about this in sessions before. Relationship building, for example, is going to be king, whether that's face-to-face or remotely. And Edward has mentioned that several times in his recent sharings on our calls, how he's suddenly, having driven, I think it was 1,000 miles a week, is driving 0 miles a week and having to adapt to communicate remotely over the net. And that's been a bit of a difficulty and a shock to the system. Also, fourthly, we can work on our flexibility and adaptability. We just have to keep pushing ourselves outside of that comfort zone. And we can do that in small ways. We don't need to take huge risks every day, but it just starts and keeps going, a mental shift, trying new things, trying new skills, small things. And that can help us to adapt our current skill set. Let's get outside our current skill set, stay flexible. Let's do a quick sales course, a tech course, as many of you are doing, I know, and see what that does to our mentality. It will keep you flexible, keep you guessing, keep you on the move. There's always more to learn. Another quote at this point, which I love, the world is changing very fast. Big will not beat small anymore. Big will not beat small anymore. It will be the fast beating the slow. That is why we have to keep on the move and flexible. Small is beautiful, and you all have a massive advantage because you're running small businesses and small operations. You're fleet of foot, you're flexible, you're not bureaucratic and overgoverned. You haven't got policy committees, governance all over you. You can do these things straight away. That's a huge advantage over those large behemoths that are being created with a lot of legacy built into them, legacy problems. Another thing that struck me was culture, change and awareness of culture and how that's affected us. We've all got to be aware of our cultural and institutional conditioning, and it is conditioning. That conditioning can come from society, from historic family societal connections, not just the current one we're in, but the ones tied to where our parents were brought up. It can come from schools. It can come from the workplace. And one of our members mentioned this recently. But wherever it comes from, be aware of our cultural limiting factors, because they are limiting factors. Were you taught, for example, to keep quiet, not to challenge anything? Were you taught that people like you don't engage in certain activities? Were you taught that tradition is everything, that the old order must be preserved no matter what? Were you taught only to follow a leader, follow principles, and not to think for yourself? Those are all actually limiting beliefs that can cause us nowadays to wither on the vine and shrivel. Another quote at that point, change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. That was John F. Kennedy. And boy, did he have some things to deal with. He had to adapt big time. So let's challenge, I think, this what I call rear view conditioning, the conditioning that's been imposed on us by society, institutions, schools, the baggage. Let's challenge that and move forward and look to the future and change our rear view to a forward view, windscreen view. Sixth thing I wanted to mention was fear. Biggest thing, the elephant in the room. It is the elephant in the room. We all know about it. It's there always with us, but we try and ignore it. But boy, do we often fear change. Perhaps we just had a bad past experience. Maybe we have a lack of confidence in our own ability, so we're afraid. But however fear got hold of us doesn't really matter. It's a choice. It's a perspective. We can fix this. And as an adaptable person, embracing change, as you all are by being in this group, we just have to accept that fear, jump off the diving board anyway. And when we hit the water, it could be uncomfortable and tough for a while. It might not be terribly pleasant, but there is no way that an aware person who's willing to give value will not find a place. I can guarantee you that. And we don't have to jump straight off the high board. We don't have to do that. We can progress upwards, take the small plunges, embrace the water, small jumps, small dives, and then just do it again and again. And we'll be on that high board before we know it. It won't seem so bad. So the seventh thing, I'm piling a lot in today, but I think this is so important. It really, really is. And I've been quite upset by seeing people get into difficulty in this year, not adapting and sinking. It upsets me a lot. So seventh thing, let's challenge assumptions. All of us, we're told, all of us have a natural bias towards facts that support our viewpoint. So we're all inclined to read things and look for the things that support the status quo in our mind, the things we believe. I think we've all got to be more aware of that. Previously, I mentioned the technique of using the 6 thinking hats, a book written by Edward de Bono, D-E and then Bono, B-O-N-O. He got us to look from all angles and ask why, to put the positives and the negatives from all angles, to see the whole problem, rather than jumping straight into the aspect we want to believe in and looking for supporting facts to support it, which is what a lot of people do. We all do it. So don't carry on making bad assumptions. They're going to prevent us all looking forward the way we should and seeing what's about to hit us. Mark talks in his sessions all the time about global factors, what is happening around the world. It's happening right now, shipping, whatever it is. So let's keep our eyes open and look forward and don't just assume things, because that's what we knew before. Eighthly, something else that Mark also spoke a lot about is developing a battlefield mentality. He's often spoken about this. I think it might have been the 10th of December, but it was December 2020 when Mark talked about planning and execution. He talked about the OODA loop, O-O-D-A. The OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. The OODA loop being a 4-stage process to making effective decisions when the stakes are high. So we can actually focus on filtering information, putting it in the right context, managing and making an appropriate decision quickly. We have to be quick in some of these things, but at the same time understanding that we can make changes as we learn more. That was the gist of what Mark told us. I hope I got it right, Mark, but he'll come out and correct me in a minute, no doubt. So let's practice as well to be looking forward and to be flexible, adaptable people, our decision-making capabilities. Mark also mentioned the Shewhart cycle, which has 4 stages as well. Plan, which is identifying the improvements that need to be made. Do it, so implement the design change you need to make. Study, in other words, measure and analyze the process or outcome that occurred. And then act if the results weren't what they should have been or you'd hoped for. So that's another useful decision-making cycle that Mark drew to our attention. So thank you, Mark. Those were both very insightful and useful piece of information from December in the recordings again of the general sessions. So lastly, and I will shut up in a minute, I promise, let's plan to be sustainable in everything we do. We have to build legs into everything so they can run for a while. And let's factor in environmental factors, global warming, etc. now. Let's think about materials. Let's think about transport challenges. Let's think about higher transport costs. The pandemic has given us warnings of what it might be like in a very different world. This could become permanent at some point. We might not be able to travel or receive goods the way we think we can now. So build phases now into our planning that have a stages of adaptability already planned into them, perhaps, so that we can readily change our direction, our service, and our product as things unfold. So I wanted to throw open the floor. Really love to hear from you. There's so much there that you could comment on. And again, anyone that comes out, even if you haven't spoken before, it does help other people when you share your own experience, because it encourages other people, maybe makes them do a mental reset when they hear what you've gone and done. So I'd love to hear about your reactions to the accelerating pace of change, the situation we find ourselves in, smart focus, being smart rather than blind, focusing on what we've always done, embracing change, conditioning from our past, how that's affected us, being afraid. So let's hear. Julia, first one with your hand up. Always great to hear from you. And thanks for participating in all the sessions you do on life and business tools. You've always got a lot to contribute. Thank you.
Well, I will accept that. I will try to gracefully accept that, but I don't think I contribute all that much, but I'm learning to say thank you. Would you just, in a nutshell, go down through all of your points, just like what I want to write them down, and I missed writing some of them down. So would you mind just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Whoa, hang on. Okay, let me
Without
just
the explanation, just like one word. If you have the one word, I'm sorry to do that.
That's okay. There's no problem. So if this is in the last part of the talk on looking at our mindset. Yeah. So looking at our mindset, first of all, be forward looking.
Okay.
And embrace change. So in other words, there I was suggesting we spend just 15 minutes a day, always forcing ourselves to look forward and learning about what is happening right now. Because when you look back on things like the smartphone, the fax machine, it was all written about. Some of these things were developed 20 years before they became useful and commercialized. So right now, I can guarantee there's a lot of information out there that Mark is also bringing to our attention in his sessions, which may just mean we can already see a clue as to what's going to happen next if we get good at spotting it. And even if it doesn't happen, one of the things we look at will come to fruition, will impact us. So if we look at 10 things, maybe one of them will dominate, but at least we knew about it. So that was the first thing. Let's build in looking forward and looking around every day at what's happening now.
Right.
And not being a first mover, learn from other people. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, let's look at focus and smart focus. In other words, not blindly focusing on the habits and consistencies we talk about every day in this group. If we do that blindly on the wrong thing, we end up building the wooden ships when the customers run out, because we just carried on saying, I'm doing this really well. I'm doing a great job. I'm doing it consistently. Look at my habit. It's perfect. I'm focusing on a great area, and then it disappears. So we've got to be smart focused by building in from point one, the things we're learning, into changing our habits and consistently doing them in a different way as needed. Not doing the same thing again and again. And the old Albert Einstein trap, insanity being doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different outcome, because the outcome needs to be different when the change occurs. So we've got to be ready to make that change ahead. And then lifelong learning was the third thing. Dive into lifelong learning, because we never stop learning, and nor can we now. As things change, degrees becoming obsolete in the third year is a warning. It's a warning that knowledge is shifting. Look at the stuff you guys learned last year on some of the courses. They've already changed. In less than a year, they were obsolete. Platform changed. Adrian Jackson's finding things changing. He's having to make challenges. Stuff is changing every day. Fourthly, we can look at our flexibility and adaptability mindset and just be aware of trying to maintain flexibility by going outside our comfort zone and trying new things, new experiences, new skills. Let's try and do that all the time, because it forces you to keep fleet of foot and in motion rather than stationary, rather than stationary. And then culture, number 5, an awareness of your cultural and institutional conditioning. That is a huge one. We've all been in situations where we were taught to think one way. That's the only thing the state or an institution or society can do. You're not encouraged to think several ways. You're encouraged to think one way in the society and family you were brought up in. That's how it is. Now we have to say, well, wait a minute, was that the right stuff for the modern era? Maybe that's old fashioned. Maybe if we just adhere to maintaining history and tradition blindly, we're going to end up in difficulty. So that was the 5th thing. The 6th thing was the big elephant in the room, fear. Don't fear change. Have a go. Make small dives into the water from the low board. Try it and just enjoy trying it for a bit and keep in motion. Just don't fear, dive in, have a go. Fear is a big inhibitor if you let it get control of you. Assumptions was number 7. We've got to challenge our natural biases towards the things we believe already, because the facts we look for will just be the things that reinforce those. You've got to open up every aspect and say, what if I'm wrong about this? Let's have a look at another aspect. Wow, there's another view here. Now, why might that be right? And why might I be wrong? If we don't do that, we get stultified and stuck in the mud. And lastly, Mark's great decision-making and planning and execution tools that he mentioned to us, the OODA loop. It's the battlefield mentality. Be ready to change your decisions and adapt as you go. Be fleet of foot again. The OODA loop and the Shuart cycle, which Mark might post. I think he has already posted some of the details in the chat. And Shuart, I think it was SHEW, Shuart. So there you go. Those and plan to be sustainable was number 9. The last one was number 9, Julia. Plan to be sustainable and build that already into your product, your service, and your cycles, and think, actually, if I do this now this way, that's my next innovation. I'm going to release that in 6 months. I've got it ready. I've got a whole plan, just like you plan your social media account right now. Here are the articles I'm going to publish over the next month. You can plan your product to say, these are the innovations I'm going to pile in over the next year. You can start thinking like that. And actually, you keep moving. We have to keep moving. It's a freight train we can't get off, I'm afraid. I hope that helped, Julia.
That was great. I didn't have it in my head that there were all these bullet points when we started, and it's easier for me if I can summarize. But anyway, I apologize for making you repeat yourself, but it was excellent.
No problem. It's no problem. And anyone that's watching, there is a recording. So it's great. Sometimes we can go back to the recording, but Julia, no, appreciate that. And gives me a chance to rabbit on even more. So there you go.
Thank you.
Great, Julia. Thanks. And Nicola has her hand up.
Hello. Thank you for that. It's always not good, thorough reminders of probably what we already know. We just don't, I certainly don't practice it enough. So that was great. And I just thought I'll share a story. I think it was point number 4. You mentioned flexibility. I got that right. So it was something I had to do last year. I've got a property business, so I have a few holiday lets, so kind of service accommodation, and they've been run fairly successfully prior to the lockdown, and pretty much all automated. So the platforms I use are Airbnb and Booking.com. So there's very limited amount of interaction you have with your guests. You might send them a welcome email, but it's pretty much all taken care of. But it is predominantly tourist based. So as you can imagine, enter into a lockdown, it came to a complete standstill. So left it a couple of months and the properties were empty, and it's costing me a fair chunk of money each month to keep them running. And then thought, I'm going to need to do something different here, because it just didn't, I think we were a bit unsure initially how long it was going to last for. So that's where the flexibility point came in. And I just thought, surely there's got to be another way of attracting business travelers, contractors, people maybe in between house moves, insurance companies is the other one we've since started working with. So rather than sit and wait indefinitely, I found a consultant who specialized in branding these type of businesses and getting much better visibility on, I think he done about 12 different platforms. So places like Google, places, there's other kind of property-based websites. He got us listed on those as well. So long story short is within probably about 6 weeks, I started to get direct bookings, so not off the Airbnb platform or booking.com. I was a little bit hesitant to do it at first because I knew it wasn't going to be as passive and as automated as the other platforms. And it's not. So I do get phone calls from insurance companies and from building companies, and they'll text me at 10, 11 o'clock on a weekend and expect a response. But do you know what? It's been worth it, because we now probably get about 40% of the bookings come from those direct channels. So I've, without planning it, completely pivoted the business so that it's not just a holiday let business. It's now I mean, some of the types of people we get in, we've just managed to house an old lady whose house had been flooded, and obviously that was being repaired. And it's the first time she'd moved out of the house for 30 years. So she came and stayed in one of my properties for 2 months. So it's just a very different business model now. And that wouldn't have come about if it wasn't for the lockdown and needing to think differently and be a bit more flexible with the type of service I offered. So it is a different model. It is a bit more active rather than passive, but I've now got somebody in mind who's going to come on board and start to help me out with the guest management. And as a result, we're now confident we can fill them all year round. And we've just taken on another one and about to get another, so that'll be 6, hopefully. So it just shows you what can come of what was a pretty dire situation in the first couple of months, and it's turned around to make quite a good success of it. So flexibility, going back to your point, I think is absolutely key. It's just to look at things differently, take a different viewpoint, stand back and just think differently about how you can resolve the problem based on what you know now, which is different to what I knew a few months earlier. But it worked this time.
I love that, Nicola. And I particularly like your mention of a consultant there, because that reminds us of some of our recent sessions. And what has come up time and time again is that people got a coach, like a life coach, like a gym coach, and here a consultant, because sometimes we just can't do it on our own, or we don't have the whole picture and we need to get help. We talked yesterday about delegates, but this is about advisors. Isn't that right, Nicola?
It is. And you know what? I was a bit, I'm sure everyone would be handing money over with no guarantees at the end of it. I could see his portfolio, see what he'd done for the clients, but he wasn't going to guarantee anything. So I put a lot of trust in him, and it didn't flow through initially. It cost me over £1,000 for the work. And there wasn't really any evidence of it in the first month, but it needed time to build. And within about 8 weeks, it had paid for itself and continues to pay for itself. So it's just always a good reminder, I think, because we're always a bit hesitant handing over.
In the meeting, that's why.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, that is really, really, so important. And again, if we don't sow the seeds in that field, nothing's going to grow. You have to spend money on the seeds. And yeah, we do need advice sometimes to break us out of a situation and try new things and have a go. And it is always risk. Sometimes it doesn't work, but if we don't try, we're definitely not going to get forward. We're going to hit the target if we try. If we keep trying, we're going to hit the target sometime. And luckily here, you hit the target straight away, Nicola. That was brilliant and great thinking, great lateral thinking, great invention. And you were brave enough to say, let's grab a consultant, pay money out and have a go. And it worked. It worked. Well done. I mean, that's what we need to hear. We all need to remind ourselves of these things. Thanks, Nicola. That's great. Hung Sang has a hand up. Hung Sang, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. Thank you, Adrian, for a great session today. And you had like all these different points, and you're like, oh yeah, there's another point. But it's so funny because when Julia asked for you to repeat it, and then I was able to write it properly with the numbers, like it all makes sense. I mean, like it is a bunch of points, but I feel that it's true. You kind of have to take a step back and look at all these different factors, right? Because like, yeah, the world is changing super fast. If we're not keeping up with it, we're gonna get washed away. And I mean, and the whole thing with like, yeah, you want to be consistent, but you want to be climbing up the ladder on the right building, not the wrong one, you know, like kind of another way of putting it. Like all these different points, like, you know, flexibility, like Nicola's story about how she pivoted her business, you know, because out of necessity, but also being willing to take a risk. Like all these things just really serves to remind us that, you know, as we figure things out through our journey, we always have to stay flexible and nimble in order to keep moving forward. And it's just super helpful. I mean, from a personal level, like what I do is I do basically planning for apparel retail industry. And in the US, this business has been changing dramatically over, gosh, yeah, the last 10 years. And it just basically accelerated in the last 5 years. And the pandemic basically just killed us all. But what for myself personally, this whole experience just serves to remind me that, yeah, like things keep changing. And if we're not aware and preparing ourselves and looking ahead and consciously setting ourselves up to be ready for the next change, we basically are at the mercy of what's happening now. And so, like, I mean, just to share, I mean, I mentioned in one of the past calls that, long story short, the company I was in, they had to eliminate a number of roles, including mine, because they couldn't deal with all the crazy changes that were happening to the supply chain this past year. I mean, it was unfortunate for me because I obviously was looking for work for a while, but it just reminds me that I personally have to just keep kind of reinventing myself. I still want to do planning, but how can I apply those skills in a segment of the industry that might be more resilient to these changes? And so right now I'm kind of trying to figure that out. But thank you so much for the reminders today that, you know, we always have to have kind of those different hats, thinking hats, so that, you know, we can take a step back and just evaluate the situation to ensure we're moving forwards. So thanks so much.
That's a lovely summary, Hung San, and you know, great reminder of what can happen if the whole supply chain suddenly gets disrupted. We go with it, which was a tremendous shock at the time. And I remember the emotions you were going through last year. It was a really bad time. So I'm so glad that's a reminder that you're thinking outside the box now. How else can I use my skills? And we can all do that. We can all do that. We can carry our portable skills, which is what we need today, to another sector, maybe a completely different sector, one that's got a future in it. Do you think, Hung San, that conditioning, cultural conditioning has played a role in the choices you've made in your life? Have you found that stopping you looking forward at all?
I mean, actually, yeah, I have to say, like what you said about the cultural conditioning, it definitely plays a role, because even though I have an Americanized accent, I really grew up in Indonesia and Singapore till I was essentially 18 before university. So I grew up with that cultural conditioning of, you know, don't raise your hand, don't do anything different, follow what the authorities above are saying, you know, don't speak up. It's a lot of that. And I remember that, I mean, through my work history, it took me a while to get used to speaking up, because speaking up and also speaking about myself and and it hurt me because like I would work really hard, but no one knew what I was doing, because I felt, to me, you know, like tooting your own horn was a negative thing growing up. At least that was the conditioning I had. And so like things like that, it still is like, yeah, after all these years of working, I still feel weird speaking up or sharing like, hey, you know, I have this idea. Like it's, so thank you for reminding us that we need to challenge that cultural conditioning, especially if it's not serving us. So yeah.
Lovely, Hung San, and it's so true. You know, we've all gone through that. We have to act in a particular way. Don't do anything different. Conform rather than think flexible. Think future. Think change. And we can change that. We can all change that. So thanks very much, Hung San. That's
Thank
lovely.
you, Adrian.
Lovely to hear from you. Adrian Jackson, our stick of dynamite, our nuclear bomb, is about to address us. How are you doing, Adrian? Oh, what happened? Hang on. Did we lose him? I think we lost him. He'll come back in a minute.
I'm still here.
Oh, you're there? I couldn't see you there.
Right.
Hey, there you are.
Right. I'm Adrian. Your topic came and hit me hard today with changes. You are definitely right. As some of you knew, my Amazon account got deactivated. And that I had all my eggs in one bar. I had a little shop, eBay shop, few other things going. But when my account got deactivated, it was like the world collapsed underneath you, and you're there like that. What do you do? What do you do? And you with Amazon, you can try to speak to them, but when your account's deactivated, it's we can't answer your question. Your account's been deactivated, and it goes on and on and on, and it becomes very stressful. So I have put the link in the comments. If you do get stuck where I am, where your account gets deactivated, check out that website, www.getunsuspended.com. It helped me to get my account reactivated again, because it's not as easy as you think. You may think, oh yeah, let's just send a few letters to Amazon. No, it doesn't work like that. It's just completely nothing. They don't tell you what the reason, they don't tell you anything. So yeah, Adrian, your topic hit me hard today, and it's just a case of changing with the times, which I found out that the hard way. And I did get my account reactivated today, but just be aware, if you get any Amazon information saying you've done something wrong, look into it. If you don't, and your account gets deactivated, you're screwed, because it's so hard to get it back. Because I know a lot of you people, you only got the one shop, Amazon, and once that goes, you've got nothing else. But keep on at it, keep fighting it like I did, appeal after appeal, and eventually I got my account reactivated again, which was a big relief from me. But just be aware of Amazon. If you get deactivated, it's really hard to get it back. So just remember, if you think your Amazon email is spam, contact Amazon directly to confirm it. They will help you, because once you get deactivated, the sales help goes away. You cannot get help from them. They will not give you none. So resolve the situation before you get deactivated, and it'll be a lot less easier to understand. And that's all I want to add today.
That's great, Adrian. And I think you were a reminder again and again, don't give up. Something changes, don't be afraid, just keep battling away. And there's often a solution. So that's another aspect of change, really. Just keep bashing away and you find ways around. You've got to go around things. Don't try and change the world, find a way around it. Thanks for that reminder, Adrian. Stefan has his hand up next.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to ask your opinion on, because you were talking about choosing like a path that you want to do. What is your thought on niches? Because I know that regardless of what I'm going to do, it's going to involve either photography or videography, or most likely both. Yet they have specific genres that they always say that you're supposed to pick. But if you're able to do more than one genre, is it bad to advertise yourself as being in multiple avenues, or do you have to just kind of stick with one?
Well, that's quite a question, Stefan. I think being small business people, niches are great. That's our natural hunting ground. we can innovate and do things and spend the time doing things a bigger business won't bother with because it's not lucrative enough, maybe not a big enough niche for them. And that goes right down to the Amazon training again, and looking for really sort of hard to find products in small areas that a big player won't go for. So right the way through services and products, there are niches. Of course, the danger is you're then not diversified. So you have to diversify or plan to diversify. So you can't lose your whole area overnight. So that's the downside. What you touched on is partly image and marketing. It's the problem we're all learning more about from John and Shannon, is that we have to present ourselves the way we're expected to present ourselves to sell in a particular area, particularly with services. So you have got to be conscious of the image you're putting out, and that can be quite difficult in conflicting niches, but that's where you need advice. You need to have somebody advising you on how you've got to put yourself out to win in that niche, because what you do in that niche may not work at all in another niche. So it's doable, but there are challenges, and you've certainly got to diversify. Niches can just go, they're quite small and specific and specialized by nature often. They can disappear. Yeah.
Like, that's how I feel. And if I'm able to do something proficiently to the level that they need, and I'm confident that I can do it, I'll say yes. It doesn't matter if it's my niche or not, as long as it doesn't go against my ethics.
Well, I mean, the thing John always tells us, don't chase too many chickens. Yeah. Sorry, Stefan, I was saying John always says, of course, don't chase too many chickens. If we don't get the first niche sorted out before we move on to the second one, we risk falling between two stools and not having either one of them rolling properly. So always bolt down one properly before you go to the next one. That's one of the things that plagues me, that you're always getting tempted with opportunities, which you grab, particularly if people want you to join them and they'd love you to take part, but that doesn't always serve you well. Get the first niche buttoned down, really rolling, and then you've got the luxury of thinking diversification into something else. So great question, Stefan. It's something that confronts us all, but niches are good for us. There's a lot of opportunity in those niches for us. That's where we can best play, perhaps. Anyway, that's great, Stefan. Thank you. Mark has his hand up. He's been patiently waiting there. I hope I got it right with the OODA loop, etc. Mark.
Oh yeah, thanks, Adrian. Yeah, John Boyd, Colonel John Boyd, U.S. Air Force. He gets to take the credit for that one. And I had mentioned in the chat here, it's just really about staying inside of that decision matrix with your competitor or adversary, whoever it is that you're competing with, whether it's product, service, etc. So that's the whole point of it. And I use a lot of those things, the short cycle, plan, do, check, act, and upper and lower control limits, and Dr. Deming principles and all that stuff, many years ago when I was in the production environment. So, and they're all great tools that I see some application here. But what I briefly just wanted to mention today, that's kind of I wasn't planning to really come out and talk today, but this whole issue of conformity, I mean, everybody has a pretty good idea what my background is. And I think conformity it has a positive connotation and a negative connotation. Obviously, we think when we think conformity, don't raise your hand, don't be the gopher that comes out of the hole, don't, put a bullseye on your chest, all those kind of things. And, say, don't be, the one that causes the issues. But where would we be as a culture, as a society, in our technologies, if somebody didn't stand up and be the one that was different, that went out and got bold, that went out and took chances, that took the risks, that went out and made things happen, and all of us, where would we be if we didn't have all those failures along the way, if we didn't have to walk through those valleys between the peaks, and all that kind of stuff. So I think conformity, while sort of the default switch might be, well, if you're a conformist, that's a bad thing. Well, I think in some respects, being conformist in some ways is good too, because it also helps us continue to be good players, be ethical players, be people who are righteous, and I don't mean that so much in the religious sense. I mean, just in terms of how we treat and talk with one another. I think that's a good kind of conformity, that we're trying, that we're operating an environment with good intent, with how we want to work and interact with one another. So before we go down that direction where we think it's always, being a conformist is a bad thing, I think there are some positive aspects being a conformist as well to a certain thing. And being a Marine, yes, while there was a lot of, there's obviously a lot of conformity there. I think we found in the last Thursdays and the 2 times I've gone through these 20 different management principles, there's a certain amount of unconformity as well that allows us to be able to move freely and be able to do those things like the OODA loop or work, on the fly, being able to adapt and overcome those kind of things as well. So walking that line as a conformist, whatever that really means, and what plane or what level. And lastly, I put a couple things here, a couple links, and I know Hung Sung probably knows, but Fiber to Fashion. If anybody goes on the Thomas Net industry news, spend some time in whatever industry or products or categories that you're at. Get out there and find, just browse and find a few things that are out there that talk about that. Because you're right, Adrian, man, life right now with the internet now, it's moving at the speed of heat. I mean, it's crazy what is happening now, and it's so hard to keep up and remain viable. And flexibility is the constant right now. And ultra flexibility, I would say. So we're on the fly. We're always on the change. And I'd say, yes, while you want to stabilize maybe in one particular area, what was the old saying? If you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch neither one. I'm becoming an advocate that you've got to be fast enough to catch both. So that's my 2 cents, brother.
I love that, Mark. Yeah, that's the way it's going. Pace is accelerating, change is accelerating. We've just got to think of new ways of doing things so that we can keep our eye on various targets. And we've talked about niches with Stefan just now. Those niches are opening and closing around us. Diversification, knowledge particularly important. I know in your sessions, global and tactical marketing, Mark, you've tried to do that from the beginning of this whole JSLM adventure, drawing to people's attention what's going on. Particularly, we've been hit with shipping and other major impact items that can change somebody's whole business or make a product just not viable, not cost effective anymore. So absolutely. And conformity, yeah, I mean, conforming in the right way, but knowing that we're up against non-conformists who are disrupting whole industries. We've got to be ready for that, to accept things have been questioned around us beyond our control, and we've got to react to that. Even if we feel that we're conformist ourselves, in business, we're forced to think differently, particularly as smaller businesses. We're not giants who can throw money at a wall and just eventually make some stick. We have to get this focused and right, and we have to be ready to move quickly, because we just don't have the reserves to throw in to bail us out if we get it wrong. So I'm afraid it's a boxing match. We're in the ring, and while it's on, we've got to keep fighting. It's the way it is. Now, it can be fun. It's fun if you're reading and aware and you've got the right approach and you're happy in what you're doing. It can be quite fun, but it's nothing ever than challenging, that's for sure. Anyway, I think we're coming to the top of the hour, and really appreciated you all taking part in this session. Hopefully we shared some useful thoughts, and thank you everyone that contributed today. That was great, great thinking that you gave us all. Later on, of course, we've got 2 more sessions. We've got IVA, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. UK, Corporate Curios. So try and join IVA's great session if you can. Followed by Wayne with Metaphors for Success, 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, 2 a.m. in the UK, if you're still around. So thanks for joining today. You can do it. We can keep moving. We've done it this far. We got on this train last year. We were brave enough to do that. So let's stay on board and let's go for it. And it's lovely to see you all doing adventurous things. Thank you, and hope to see you later. Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye
Adrian.
for now. Thanks for a great session. Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye.